way, my point is that we have free will, right? So
We
with that
do?
free will, the way like God revealed himself, giving us information and then giving us a choice to either be with him or against him, actually upholds the value of love. Because you can't have love without free will. You need to make a choice, right, to work for the well-being of another. That's truly what love is. You
Okay,
don't get that without self-consciousness.
what are any of these things? What the heck is free will?
So I would say free will is the ability to make choices that actually make a difference in different aspects of ethical aspects, moral aspects. You have you can make choices. And we
Okay,
are programmed.
what evidence do we have that we have that?
Well, obviously, so I'll give you an example, right? So fathers in this country, you could either be a involved father and love your kid, or you could be a deadbeat dad, right? You make that choice to either sacrifice and work for the well-being of another, or you
What
don't. And
evidence
that's
do you
really
have that
what
people freely
encompasses
make that
life.
choice?
Well, I just gave you a scenario that everybody has that choice to make, right? When they enter a relationship with a
So
parent-child
you're just
relationship, right?
so I asked you for evidence and you asserted a case where choice happens and then you said it's a free choice. That isn't evidence. You're just separately claiming that we have free will in a specific circumstance.
I guess so, yeah. In that circumstance, I'm showing that free will is there, right?
But you're not.
Well, I'm telling you, you could either be involved in your kid's life or you could be a deadbeat dad, right?
Yes, and so what evidence do we have that people freely make that choice?
Okay, so you're getting to that. So do you think we're just a biochemical reaction and love is within that?
I don't think love is real. I think people experience there's sort of a common physiological experience that people have, and so we call that thing love. But in a way, it's kind of weak because whatever somebody's conscious experience is unobservable to anybody else. But there are like some certain like cues in the body that are consistent from one thing to the other. Like there's no
Right.
possible way for me to prove that the way I feel pain is just like the way you feel pain. But we
Hmm.
both but there's a certain predictable reaction that each of us would have if, for example, we smashed our thumb with a hammer, or if our best friend called us a big fat doo doo head, right? So,
But
anyways,
then you're just reducing it to matter and energy, and then we're robots, basically. Highly complex biochemical reactions, right? But
yeah.
at the
So
same time, you're
just
reducing it
because
to
it's
that,
just because
so
it's
we really don't have a decision.
unpalatable doesn't make it untrue.
You're saying we just don't really have a decision. That's like, and I see
Yeah, I
that
see no
point.
evidence of it.
It's really deep. It's really deep, but it's like you have a lot of burden of evidence, right? You need to substantiate that. That's crazy.
Well,
That's
I would say
insane.
that so do you, but I feel like that's not the hardest thing in the world to do on my position. I mean,
That's deep, bro. That's really deep. That we don't really have free will because it's technically a very complex biochemical reaction, so everything's technically predetermined. That's really deep. And it's like you have a lot
yeah, but
of.
it's consistent with everything we know about nature.
Sure, but what I'm appealing to you is until you find that evidence, right? What we see is this thing that's transcendent, which is the self-consciousness, and that's what I was probing at.
But you
Evidence for
don't. But
self-consciousness and things
yeah,
like
but you don't
that.
have evidence of that.
But
Like I have evidence
I'm
that we
also
actually
just
are.
saying you guys really don't have any evidence for it either, and I think
No,
you
I
guys
got
need
I
to
got
up
nothing but
that.
evidence. So we are made.
Self-consciousness,
Yeah, there's no evidence
self-consciousness.
that humans are composed of anything other than atoms and molecules, right? There's no evidence that what guides our thoughts and decisions is anything other than a bottom up process, right? It begins with it's like where do our mental states and thoughts come from? Well, they arise from the brain. That's a lower level order, but the brain activity is mediated through neural pathways, which are mediated through the activities within individual neurons, which are mediated through, chemicals passing back and forth. There's no free will in any of those steps. It's all just, simple physical reality all the way or all the way up the chain, and it's at the bottom up. And I see no evidence that free will emerges anywhere out of all
But
these
our
other things
experience
which
of
are
life
determined.
contradicts
Deterministic.
it. So you need evidence to substantiate that it's just because what I'm appealing to the fact that there's more to matter and energy, right? That's what's in contention. And if you're
Well, yeah,
appealing to
you
the
need
fact that it's
evidence of
just
that.
matter and energy, but the self-consciousness is just matter and energy, that's a bold claim that your side really needs to work on.
It's really not very bold because it's consistent with every single thing we know about matter
But
and
why is
the
it
fact
so
that we are
poorly
matter and that we
researched?
are
And
composed of it.
like you guys need to do better research so you can convince me, right? I'm a real human being sitting here and looking for the truth. I'm trying to look at what self-consciousness, how that comes through matter and energy, and how this
Okay,
personhood,
so
and it's hard to we.
so you're beginning with the position that we have this thing called free will, whatever it is. But what evidence do you have that we have it?
Well, my evidence, like I gave an example, I could give you another example. I could choose, like, just on the street, I could choose to slap someone or steal their property, or I could choose not to.
That's
It's
not
very simple.
evidence of free will. You're just claiming here's a circumstance where free will played into it. That's not evidence.
Okay, so if somebody slaps someone and then their defense was, oh, my environment, the way I was raised, I just had to slap them, right? And the justice system would say, no, that's actually just wrong in reality. There's actually just wrong. That's just wrong to steal someone's property, to do that. So where does the value of human come from? And when we say these things, there's a lot of
We
unanswered.
make up things all the time. Literally, all of the noises that are coming out of your head hole mean absolutely nothing except we've all agreed that they mean something, which is why people speak different languages and why the meaning of things changes over time. You could try this by going to Walmart and trying to hand over three goats and a chicken in order to buy your groceries, and you could say, "Look, $100 bills are worth absolutely nothing. These are real material goods that I'm trying to give you that actually have value. Money doesn't." But money is another fictional system that we all buy into. We know it's not literally the case, but it's a game that we're all happy to play because it works well for us. But also, like the idea of if you don't have free will, not having free will doesn't mean that you don't make choices. What you're really saying is nobody makes free choices,
Mhm.
their free will does. Well, what is this free will? Nobody has any idea.
Exactly.
What it really means is something that isn't part of our physical self is controlling us. Now, I don't find that to be a better idea at all, and I also see absolutely no evidence of that.
Well, it doesn't seem that matter and energy is the cause of this effect of self-consciousness yet. That's what I'm saying. There needs to be more evidence behind how matter and energy is creating the system of self-consciousness to where we can have free will and thus love. Because I think we have free will, you don't. That's what's in contention because
Okay,
you're boiling it down to matter and energy.
so
I'm saying, where's the evidence
we
that
have nothing we
being a
have nothing
deadbeat
but
dad?
evidence of this because we know what the composition of living things is, and we understand that changing the physical material thing can induce changes in the conscious state of somebody in their experience. For example, if you were to take nicotine or methamphetamine or alcohol or some sort of psychoactive or whatever, it's going to actively change your mental state and your conscious experience. Now, that is proof positive that physical things, in a sort of bottom up way, as I described earlier, end up playing a role in our conscious experience. And so,
Absolutely.
where does the conscious experience come from in the first place? I think that that's good evidence that it arises from all of these physical parameters to begin with in the first place. It's not from some creepy top down thing called free will that nobody knows what it even is. And so we don't even
Well,
have a
because
reason to believe
well
it
the
except for a preference.
Can I add something to this?
Yeah, sure.
So there's two issues here.
objective
One,
morals, but yeah, go
yeah,
on.
again, so a number of things here. You can have morality without assuming free will. If you ground morality in what causes suffering and what causes flourishing, you don't have to assume any kind of freedom of choice there. Number two, again, I explained this to you when you were on my live. That your talk like, that God is love by not giving us concrete evidence that He exists is absurd, right? Like that doesn't make any sense. Again, the choice between following Him or not is independent of my awareness that He exists. So if He wants a relationship with us, or if He at least wants to give us the real choice where we can make an informed decision of some kind, we would at least need to know that He existed first. He doesn't provide enough information for any rational person to make that conclusion. And as far as free will is concerned, somebody slapping the street can be explained completely by deterministic causes. And as far as consciousness goes, everything that we know about conscious experience is lost when you damage the physical brain. So why would we assume that there needs to be something beyond the physical? We don't have any basis to imagine anything beyond the physical, and you're trying to shift the burden of proof onto us when it's on you. If you want to say there's something beyond the physical that might explain consciousness, provide evidence for that. Because all we have is evidence that the consciousness is grounded in the physical. So I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, self-consciousness. Do you have evidence of self-consciousness being
Yeah,
grounded in the
yeah.
physical?
Yeah, you damage any part of the brain, something about conscious experience is lost. So you damage the brain, we forget our names. You damage the brain, we can recognize faces.
Sure.
You damage the brain, we can't navigate the world we exist in. All of this, self-consciousness is emergent from brains doing what they do. Now, are
Don't you
they
think the
open
brain could be
questions?
the
Sure.
vehicle for the spiritual, the transcendent force that
I
we're
have no
talking
reason to
about?
assume a spiritual transcendent force. These are words you're saying that mean nothing to me. Until you can provide a reference point beyond just your feelings, I have no reason to assume that those things are real. Now, I'm not saying the question of consciousness is in some sense an open question. Like what is the specific
Not just any
physical?
consciousness, right? Self-consciousness, because there's different types of consciousness. There's no consciousness, there's self-consciousness. So
Yeah,
is evolution more of a guided process, right? Or
yeah. There's
con
nothing about either any of those states, any of those stages that require anybody to make an assumption that some non-physical thing has to be guiding this, right? Nowhere in that are we justified in making that assumption.
Okay, but if it's just okay, let's just take the evolutionary viewpoint of this. Why is it that we have evolved to develop this self-consciousness? What's the reason in your worldview of
It,
why we've evolved to
I
develop
Well,
mean,
the
it?
evolutionary reason for anything is going to be that it gives us statistically better odds of surviving.
your view doesn't resolve it any better, right? Because you can always ask the why, like why are the laws of physics what they are? Well, why did God make the laws that He made, or why is God's nature the way that it is? You ultimately you get to a point where you can't answer the why; you just have an observation of the what, and your worldview doesn't resolve that either. But your worldview makes more assumptions than mine does.
Well, I'm just saying if there's intangible values like love and justice and things which we disagree
There's nothing
on, you
intangible
guys
about
don't
it. We
think
can
those are
we can
real?
explain that in physical terms too. We can say that there are certain when we have a positive experience, there is a concrete quality of what it feels like, and so we value that experience versus one of just pure suffering. This can be explained purely in mechanistic and physical
No, no, no.
terms.
But if somebody is just if I'm just paying someone to love me or like me, or if it's in a relationship where there's no sacrifice or free choice to do so, it's not love. It's like infatuation,
No,
basically.
no, you
Love is a
can
free
love can be
decision
explained
to
even
work
without free
for the
will.
well-being of
Love
them.
can be explained as a type of experience. You can still make sacrifices, but be determined through mechanistic nature to make those sacrifices, right?
That's where we part company because you made a statement, you made a claim there, and I'm saying if you're making that claim, then substantiate self-consciousness. And you guys haven't even brought up one thing about self-consciousness.
I
That
just
you
gave
say
you
the brain
I just
thing,
gave
I
you a
say
very
that's a
clear
What?
example.
mechanism through which
What are
the
you talking about?
spiritual can work, right?
I just gave you a very
I just want
clear
a study
example,
of what is the self-consciousness
right?
in matter and energy form.
So
What
again,
is that?
you assuming some metaphysical explanation is doing any work. At least we have one thing is to say what is it about matter that leads to consciousness, right? That's an open, but that question doesn't get resolved by you making up um, that some god or some spiritual reality does it. Because I can ask, well, how does that do it? And you can't tell me either, right? At least I can observe the physical aspect. I can recognize that when we damage the physical brain, these aspects that you call self-consciousness get lost. So we can find a link between the two, as opposed to you making a story, right? The burden of proof is on you expressing that there's some non-physical thing at play. You know,
But you're saying the self-consciousness is lost in that situation, but you don't even know what it is.
what do you mean? Self-consciousness is self-awareness. What do you mean? I don't know what it is.
Okay, and yes, so dolphins have it, animals have it. We have a capacity to analyze ourselves, abstract,
Yes, show me what about
discern.
that needs a non-physical explanation.
Well, it's just that's what I'm asking you. What is the explanation for it? Physical.
Brains.
Past the fact that you
If
use, okay, if the brain gets damaged, and I'm telling you, okay, even then, in my worldview, you're connecting to a transcendent
but
force. So
yeah, but that's a
that is
claim.
just the vehicle
But
through
that's
which
a
that is
claim.
connected. So it's not
But
even
that's a
gonna,
claim, right? I don't care
sure,
about
but it's not
claims.
even gonna like deter my opinion on it because my worldview is that it's there's a transcendent force. So if you say the brain is getting damaged and I'm losing self-consciousness, well, you're tying into a transcendent force is
No,
the
no,
whole
I'm
point,
not.
right?
That's you.
That's what I'm talking about.
How do you get to that conclusion? I'm not tying to any transcendent force. I'm saying the brain is what produces consciousness, right? Maybe it emerged from consciousness, or maybe it's identical to consciousness. And there is some physical configuration of matter that produces self-awareness. Exactly the way how it does that, I don't know any more than you making up the spiritual can tell us how it does it. So on what ground? I'm not grounding my explanation in anything supernatural or spiritual. That's your assumption. I'm asking you, why do you make that assumption?
Well, this whole thing started and it breaks down when I'm literally being told that everything is a biochemical reaction and that free will doesn't exist,
But what is
right? So
breaking that
that's
Right.
literally what I
down?
Well,
was told off the
yeah.
bat. Free
So
will
because
doesn't exist, okay?
so
And
here's
so
here's
like, do you understand? Like, we're not even on the same like planet right
Yeah, because
now
you're making
because you don't even
assumptions
think
that
free will
okay.
you can't
exists.
justify.
Prime. Let me jump in here. So we're telling you, like you're saying, like we have no evidence, but no, we know that we have brains, and we know that we can physically manipulate the brain, and we can chemically manipulate the brain, and that causes direct changes to a conscious experience that somebody has. And we all agree that the decisions we make and all of those things, the way we operate, is part of that conscious experience, right? Now you're saying there's something called free will in here, but you're not giving us an explanation even of what free will is or where it comes into the picture at any point or any evidence of it.
Well, I'm just telling you, it's through the self-conscious experience of humans through a guided process of evolution, right? And that's where I'm saying it comes in through the self-consciousness. So it starts with self-conscious.
That's really not any different than saying it
You
exists.
haven't shown how self-conscious leads to free will. Again, you're just making claims.
But you guys made a huge bold claim saying that we don't have any free will and everything is
It's not bold
determined.
at all because we don't observe this free will anyway.
Yeah, it's it's
We
it's
don't
no
make
more
any
bold than
choices, you're
saying
saying.
magic
We don't
isn't
make any
real.
choices, really.
It's not bold at
Ultimately,
all.
we are not making any
It's not
choices. It's
bold at
all
all. It's
predetermined.
supported in every
That's your
scientific.
bold claim.
No, at all. it's actually a very
There's a lot
simple.
to substantiate.
It's a very
Sure, that's the
easy.
conclusion you could drive right now because your presupposition is there's nothing
No, it's not a
supernatural. So
presupposition.
sure,
No,
yeah,
not at all.
but there's a lot of burden of proof
Yeah,
there.
it's not a presupposition. We arrived at a conclusion because we observed the fact that our actions are dependent on neurological events that we ourselves do not author, right? So they've done experiments on this where they can predict the choice somebody makes before they're even aware of it. We can look at modern physics and what it tells us about time and what
You
that
can
means
predict
for free
some
will.
choices. Can you predict all choices? See, that's like weird. That's a
It's
weird
because it's
statement.
yeah, but we can't. I have no idea. We can predict that hurricanes will happen in the future, but exactly where and when they will happen and precisely where they will go, we can't. But it would be very silly to therefore then claim that means that Poseidon is manifesting all hurricanes and they move in the direction of his choosing, or you could say it's Yahweh, whatever. The the lack of resolution beyond having an understanding that these things happen and that there are physical effects that lead to them is not evidence that something spooky is going on.
Don't you think there's okay, I see where you're coming from, but don't you think, okay, when you compare a robot, a programmed machine to a human being, right? What
Descartes
the
thought we were
discernments you
machines.
make, there's so much there that's where I'm saying you guys need to substantiate more with evidence because you guys say you have so much
This is
evidence.
mind-boggling.
You're talking about us
We've
being a
yeah, but I
robot
feel like we've explained
and the
it a whole
same
bunch of
breadth of the
times, and
human.
you're
So
just
compare the two
saying
and find the
you're just kind of
differences, which
going
is a
no.
lot.
So do you agree? Do you agree that you by simple physical or chemical or electrical stimulation of the brain you can completely alter somebody's mood, behavior, and emotional state? Do you agree with
Um,
that or disagree with that?
yes, I agree with that. Not completely alter their behavior necessarily because I still agree that they'll make choices, right? Not
Right.
Yeah, but
completely
not
their behavior.
freely. So, for
Uh,
example, there were
I don't know about
Peter Milner, and Jim Olds. They did these rat experiments where they tried to they put electrodes in rat brains, and they tried to get the rat to stimulate. They were trying to do like classical conditioning. So if the rat would push this lever, they would get a shock, and they were trying to teach them avoidance. When one of the rats, the electrode was bent and it was touching the pleasure center of the rat. So the rat pushed the lever, and every time it got a jolt, it stimulated the pleasure centers of the brain. The rat did nothing other than push that lever until the rat starved to death. It completely overrode the ability of the rat, its nascent internal instinctual drives towards hunger and thirst and rest, which are some of the most powerful uh, innate reflexes that we have, right? This one thing.
that.
So I would say that's extraordinarily good evidence that we don't actually freely make decisions in the way that you're asserting,
Yeah,
because simple
Well, I
manipulation can
think
destroy
when you're
you.
talking about a rat, right? So first of all,
Rat, they have mammalian brains just like we do.
they have a consciousness. They're not self-conscious.
You don't know that.
And actually, that's
You think
definitely not
rats are
true.
self-conscious?
I mean,
That's like,
they're
come on.
absolutely self-conscious, but
They're not
Peterson,
self-conscious.
I'm gonna drop down because I can see this is
Oh,
not
that's
gonna
fine.
go. But
Thank you.
hey, it's good to talk to you. Thank you for bringing
Bro.
up.
Thank you. Right. So, knowing that you don't have the same conscious experience as a rat, how are you claiming that they are not consciously aware? Because
Well, okay,
they
I
don't
guess,
tell us that they
okay.
are.
So all very, very simply, it would just be like a mirror test.
Okay. We've
Self-awareness
done
at
mirror
least,
tests
right?
on
We need
plenty
to
of
at least have
mammals.
self-awareness, right?
Primates can pass it. Elephants can pass it. I don't know if they've done these
Yep.
tests on rats or not, but
If they did, I bet they'd fail it.
okay. So therefore, what?
So like, so like, you need at least self-awareness before you could have self-consciousness. So like, yeah, I see, but we still have decisions
Why?
in that. So what I'm saying is self-conscious, we have decisions. Rats don't have that, right? We're
Sure. Well,
humans.
here's the problem though. This same kind of thing has been done to people, and similar results are found.
Okay, similar, but there's still a lot of complexity in that where they're making decisions about from their
You
will,
don't.
right?
Yeah. Again, what evidence do you have of that?
So if a human is like homeless, right? And they could make a bunch of different decisions on how they're going to go about that.
Do you think people just freely choose to be homeless?
No, but once they are homeless, from that point, they can make a bunch of decisions that they could freely make decisions. I don't think they're completely programmed just to be homeless forever in a cycle,
What evidence do
right?
you
They
have?
can make a decision to get out of that.
Right. So, what evidence do you have of that?
You don't think that happens?
What evidence do you have
Homeless
that
people
people
changing their
freely
lives?
make choices?
So you don't think any drug addict has freely made a choice to stop doing drugs?
They didn't freely choose to be addicted, so how are they freely choosing to stop being addicted all of a sudden? That is a fantastic gift. Thank you so much, whatever the heck that was.
All right, on that note, bro, I think I'm just gonna end it there. I think we're going in circles. I think I've made my case. I mean, you're just
You
so on
haven't
your
produced
side.
any evidence, though, is the thing. You just asked, like, I asked you for evidence twice, and you said you really don't think that it's true.
Drug dealers can stop being drug dealers
What
and freely
evidence do you
choose?
have that people freely make choices?
Okay, I gave you a bunch of I'm on my phone right now and
You
stuff.
gave me scenarios and asserted that free will exists in these scenarios. Thank you for the gifts. What
Okay, what would
evidence
you
do
say
you
about those
have?
scenarios? Why do you have to just evade them?
What evidence do you have? I've made my case many times.
My evidence would be there's at least a percentage of the population that are addicted to drugs and make a free choice to stop doing drugs.
You're just claiming that you're. So I said, what evidence of free will do you have? And you said, people exercise their free will. Do you know what a circular argument is?
So you're just not taking my evidence because I didn't source or cite anything.
It's
If I
not
cited what I
evidence,
just
it's
said
an
to you, would you take it?
argument.
If I just
You're
cited what I said to you, would you take it?
That's not evidence, it's an argument, and your argument is circular. You're saying free will exists because there are certain circumstances where people exercise their free will.
Okay, I see what you mean. I'm saying free will is a free decision, first of all. You can make decisions,
I
right?
don't
So
need you
that's
to
the
tell me what it
basis.
is. I'm asking for evidence.
So we could down to it. So you can make a free decision to stop doing drugs. You can make a free decision to stop doing drugs, right?
How do you not get this? You're just claiming that free will exists as your evidence. That's not
Okay, I see what
evidence.
you mean. I see what you
Then
mean.
stop doing it. Or admit that you don't have any evidence.
Okay, but what you're literally stating is that we're robots and everything is predestined, basically,
Yeah.
to that
So
ultimate
just
level.
an appeal to emotion is also not evidence. It's also an argument, and it's not a good argument.
Okay, I said I wanted to stop this argument like 2 minutes ago. Like,
Yeah,
I
well,
think we're going in circles.
I
I
see.
told
I
you.
enticed you in. I'm irresistible. You do not have the free will to leave on your own. I am keeping you here. It's not up to you. If you have evidence to the contrary, I would like to see it.
Okay, man. I'm gonna leave right now,
Are
but
you?
I don't think
You're
everything's.
not.
I think
You're
we
actually
can
not. You
genuinely
know
make
how I
choices.
know that? Because I just kicked you out. Got him! That guy does not have free will. That is not the poster child for free will.